This month, in recognition of Bibi Moore Campbell, National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, Unapologetically Black Unicorns is proud to present a special 5-part series on Black youth mental health, supported by Hopelab and featuring the Hopelab HBCUs, Historically Black Colleges and Universities, Translational Science Fellows. The music featured throughout this series comes from A New Deal for Youth, an album produced through a New Deal for Youth initiative, a program of the National Collaborative for Youth Policy. It amplifies the voices, creativity, and leadership of young people. We hope this series informs, motivates, and reminds us all of the importance of investing in mental health and well-being of Black youth. So let's cue the music and let's get into it.
New deal for youth. What you wanna do here? New deal for youth. What you wanna do here? New deal. Change it up, I need a new feel. New deal. My problems is too real. New deal.
All right, well, welcome back to Unapologetically Black Unicorns. We are here for another episode in our special series about Black youth mental health. And thanks to Hopelab, we're able to talk to some amazing, wonderful, y'all know I do my adjectives, researchers from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities that are involved in a Hopelab fellowship program for HBCUs and Black youth mental health. So I have one of the fellows with me today, and that would be Breonte Guy, who I'm going to have Breonte introduce himself. And should I be calling you Dr. Guy? My bad.
I am officially Dr. Breonte Guy, but Breonte works beautifully.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Karis. First and foremost, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. I have been so excited about sharing this time with you. I am Breonte Guy. I'm a community psychologist and professor of psychology at Winston-Salem State University, and that's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm also, at the current moment, the interim chair of the Department of Psychological Sciences at Winston-Salem State, where we do lots of hands-on work with our students and try our best to engage them in the work that we're doing in a real and authentic way to excite them about research and the opportunities that they have once they leave us.
Fantastic. And you, as a fellow, tell me why being in this fellowship, number one, is important and why it's important to have it focus on researchers at HBCUs.
Well, I think the fellowship is crucially important, and it came at a really important time in many of our lives because opportunities like this actually really don't come along all that often for HBCU researchers. So when I actually got the notice, it was from Dr. Charity Griffin. Dr. Griffin actually works in collaboration with Hopelab. She is one of my faculty members. And I knew that she was doing this work with Hopelab, and I had an interest, and we'd had several conversations about the work, but the work that she was doing was just a little bit less aligned with the work that I was doing. And I thought, I don't know if this is a perfect match. And then I read through the actual description of the announcement, and I thought, this is exactly what I need and where I need to be at the moment. I'm a person who's passionate about culturally responsive mental health care. I'm a person who's passionate about working with youth rather than on youth. And so when I put all of those thoughts together, I thought, well, I think there are some ways that I've been thinking about to help my work, my research evolve. And this is the perfect tool to help bridge the gap between what I was doing and what I am doing.
So let's talk a little bit about your project. So exactly, I know what it is, but I'm going to let you explain it. Yeah, what is it?
It's the G.A.M.E project. So the project that I'm working on with Hopelab, that Hopelab is so generously funded over the past couple of years, is called G.A.M.E. And G.A.M.E stands for Gamified Activities for Mental Empowerment. So G.A.M.E is at its core not just your average mental health app. It's not another mental health app. And so I think that it's something special and has a unique angle on digital mental health. It's a culturally responsive digital mental health tool. It's built with youth instead of merely for youth. So what G.A.M.E is focused on is building connection. I want to build belongingness and identity, help Black youth develop emotional growth tools, and I want them to do that in a space that empowers them and that has been co-created with them. So G.A.M.E is a co-created gaming space where Black and Brown youth can come together to build connection and belongingness. And my goal is through using and actually enjoying, hopefully, fingers crossed, the game, that they are going to actually be less likely to be socially isolated and lonely. Loneliness is the major problem that I'm trying to help them avoid, and the negative repercussions that come along with being a lonely individual, things like being depressed, more anxious, etc.
Yeah.
So that's my ultimate goal with developing the game. I saw that there was a space in the digital mental health area for a project like this, for a product like this. And I decided that maybe it was an adequate time for me to work with youth to develop that product.
First of all, this is super exciting. I'm not much of a gamer, but I'm definitely somebody who has been over the years looking in the space of digital mental health apps and apps in particular, and AI now, of course. But wow, there are a gazillion million out there. And when you try to sift through them and what they're doing or what they say they're doing, it's sometimes very hard to find apps that are focused on Black youth and or brown youth that are culturally aligned and or culturally co-developed either. So love all of that. Yay. And also love that it's focused on this idea of belonging and reducing isolation because what was it, 2 years ago? Yeah, it had to have been 2 years ago when the Surgeon General put out a report about the loneliness epidemic. I mean, he was talking about our young people, right? So anything to assist our young people, developing skills for connecting to others is wonderful. So when they're playing this game, what are they actually doing in it?
Okay, so we are, and I think you may have started to ask this question earlier. I'm going to answer it, even if you weren't going to ask it. Where are you in the game's development? So we are at,
yes.
we are at the current moment co-creating the paper prototype. So the goal was at the end of the 2 years to have a playable prototype. That goal was my own goal, right? I am a community psychologist. I am not a game developer. So of course, when I started working with the game developers, they said, your timeline is a bit unrealistic, right? I had to make some adjustments, but that for me is fine because bringing in students to do the work in co-creation and the process of the work that I'm doing is just as important as the actual product that will emerge at the end of this research. So we are developing the paper prototype. We've worked currently with 20 youth advisors who have given us copious amounts of feedback about the types of gaming environments that they would prefer, the types of affordances that they need within those gaming contexts, the types of experiences that they want to have, how they would like to reflect within the context of a gaming environment. You might find this interesting, Harris. I am not a gamer either myself. I do this work from the very, very, very broad 30,000 foot perspective of someone who is not connected to the gaming community in any significant way. Of course, I loved watching people play video games when I was a kid. I grew up in a super religious household where video games were the devil. So ultimately, they weren't really an option for kids like me. They were verboten. So I just never picked up that skill. However, one thing that I did learn from paying attention to the gaming community and working with the gaming community closely for game development is that there are specific and special needs that this community has. They're full of bright, intelligent, wonderful, expansive thinking people. And so I've learned a lot from gamers working on the game. I am not a gamer, and so I see it all very scientifically, but it is, I think, a highly valuable experience to participate in work like this when you are not emotionally connected to it, because you can then see the blind spots that maybe some people haven't seen in the past.
Yeah. So when you're bringing these young people together and having them think about the environment, the structure,
Mhm.
all of the things. Again, I'm not going to use the right terms because what do I know about game development? Absolutely nothing. Um, how has it been working with the young people? I mean, is this something that you've done before, or in this process, have you learned anything from the young people as you've gone through this process?
And I've learned so much from young people going through this process. Maybe I could give you a little bit of a quick overview of the evolution of my work with youth, and maybe that'll clarify why it's so important for me to be making this transition at this time. So, when I first started out in 2014, I came to Winston-Salem State for my first position as a tenure track assistant professor. And at that time, I was doing research on STEM identity, broadening participation in STEM, and I had a really clear goal of expanding STEM opportunities for underrepresented minorities. Over the course of time and experience, I started to see that there were some specific angles that weren't necessarily being addressed when it came to STEM persistence. And I wanted to actually address those angles. So rather than just saying, oh gosh, there's all these deficits, and that's why Black people aren't performing. I was one of the first people who said, let's look at people who have done a great job at it, see how they were successful at what they did, and then take that information and weave it into the research that I do from a strengths-based perspective. So from there, I started to see, well, it looks like they're bored with some of the STEM classes. How can we make those STEM classes more exciting? And my team and I reached out to NSF for a little money, and they supported us with about $500,000 to actually develop some STEM modules to implement in third through fifth grade classrooms to try and not just make STEM learning more exciting for students, but also give teachers a break, because teachers, K through 12 teachers, have in North Carolina about 30 minutes that they need to dedicate to STEM learning based on our science learning standards. And the truth of the matter is that every day they weren't able to get to that. So they would say, oh, we'll just pass over STEM learning today in favor of history, or yes, things that I was shocked to learn about. And I said, no, we've got to do something. So my team and I actually developed a series of STEM learning modules that we could develop, that we could implement in the classroom. We could just take them off the shelf and say, here you go, turn these on, and your students can pull up their Chromebooks and have a fun day of STEM learning without you having to, and you can grade papers while they're doing that. So the modules was one of the first steps leading me towards the development of the game. In co-alignment with the modules, we developed in parallel. I don't know if you've heard about William Chambers' DAS, the Draw a Scientist test. The Draw a Scientist test is one of these projective tests that we've used for years just to sort of gauge how people view scientists, what some of their stereotypes about scientists might be. So we'll go into a classroom and say, draw a scientist, and we expect from that classroom that, particularly if it's a classroom of Black students, that they're probably going to draw a white guy with a beard, and he's going to have thick Coke bottle glasses, and there'll be beakers around him and things blowing up, and there's probably a thought bubble saying something like Eureka. But the truth of the matter is, for Black students, they oftentimes don't see themselves like that. And also, who draws anything on paper and pencil anymore? Not many people. So I
Mm.
thought to myself, we've got to do something for Black kids who are getting the DAS. Let's digitize it, right? Something that hadn't been done. So we digitized the DAS and made it a fun little sort of section of a game, you might say, the place where in a game you create your character. So we developed features for the characters. We developed what we hoped was a culturally tailored image of a Black person. And maybe we didn't do the best job of it because we weren't all that advanced. But years later now,
Yeah.
as I work on the game project, doing similar things, but rather outside of the STEM identity context, now in the mental health and wellness context, I'm developing similar tools.
Mm.
And it's just that those tools have a different purpose. They're not about STEM learning and broadening participation in STEM necessarily. They are about bringing youth together for their mental health and wellness. Now, there is still a broadening participation element to the work that I do because I work with not only the youth consultants that we work with, the 20 youth consultants, but I also have an advisory board of youth, three of which one is an education major and two psych majors who are gamers, who do this work, and they've had a huge impact on the development of game themselves. So from a learning perspective, bringing them in as
Mhm.
co-creators is broadening participation and keeping them invested in STEM learning.
Yeah.
It's just that the STEM learning we're doing is within the realm of psychology. Psychology is a STEM field. It's just that we're often not clumped together
Yeah.
with biology or physics or chemistry, although we are a STEM field. So it is a nice intersection of STEM learning and mental health and wellness that
Mhm.
has been such a pleasure to work at.
Wow. So this is so cool because I heard a couple of things. And for people who of course you guys as in you all the listeners can't see us, but I was making big googly sort of what the heck eyes during part of the conversation because it's like, yeah, here we go, that's gonna happen. But also when we talk about um asking the right question. Sometimes we're asking the deficit question. And my background is in industrial organizational psychology. So for me, I like to flip it and ask move more towards an appreciative inquiry question, which is that strength-based question. Rather than saying, well, let's look at all the people who don't and figure out why they don't, flip it and say, well, wait a minute. There are people who do. What do they look like? What are some characteristics of the people who do, and how do we tap into that? So that's great. I mean, representation does matter. Being able to see yourself in that role, or being able to, yeah, see yourself because you see somebody else who looks like you, or who comes from your
Yes.
community, or who comes from your socioeconomic background, or what have you. That those things are so, so critically important. And so the game developers themselves are they Black or brown folks too?
So I'm working with actually student developers. So
Oh.
this I have a student developer and I also have a student artist who has
Oh.
done the artwork for the game. This is a completely youth co-creation
Love
process.
it.
Now, this summer we have some serious designers on board, on tap, who are going to help us push things forward in a little bit more professional way. They're going to teach my students about what real game development looks like and what the timelines really look like and how to
Mm.
use Unity to actually get your characters to come alive, etc. So that's good. We've got someone from Discord coming. We've got some other people from, some really important people in the digital mental health sphere who are on board to help out. And you know what I want to say? I have so much appreciation for people in this space who recognize that there aren't a lot of us out there who are trying to create platforms like this for Black and Brown youth, and they are coming on with support. They are not asking many questions. They are jumping on board with support,
Mhm.
and I just love that.
That is fantastic. I actually went to a gamers conference. Why is Kara's going to a
Oh.
gamers conference? Because I could. I don't know, but I don't know why I went initially. I think it was because it was in the town that I happened to be in visiting my dad, and I thought, oh, this might be kind of cool.
Mhm.
And it was really, I went to one of the gamers sessions, and I actually ran into them in the hotel. It's an African American woman, few and far between. We were kind of like specks in the white desert, you know. And as soon as we see each other, it's like, sis, it's like, oh, we're like running to each other like we had been long lost friends and we didn't even know each other. But it was really exciting actually to go to her session and hear her talk about the needs for Black gamers. And it was interesting to hear from the audience. Oh, so if this game is set up, she was doing like live role-playing games,
Mhm.
online role-playing games, not like live action role-playing games, but online.
Mhm.
And the characters can be, diverse. And like these characters are made up anyway. They have elf ears, they've got, fangs like vampires. And so, but it was funny that the audience was asking, white audience, so are white people allowed to play this game? Well, nobody's checking.
Right.
Nobody's checking. And we certainly don't ask, in the opposite direction where we don't see characters who look like us. Are Black people allowed to play this game? But it
Right.
was super interesting to kind of hear the real world entering into a gaming world that
Yeah.
is the gaming world. What the game is made up stuff. You're making stuff up. But that was very fascinating actually to go to that conference and to see how big it was, how big gaming is. And I guess that's going to bring me to another question.
Hmm.
As we hear in the media currently in what's happening to young people in technology, as we try to find ways to create safe spaces and safe ways for people, for young people in particular, to use technology.
Hmm.
How are you balancing that against the messaging around, oh, they're on technology too long, they're on social media too long, these things are dangerous for young people. So while you're trying to develop a piece of technology, like how do you balance how do you balance that tension if it is one?
Yeah, there is a bit of a tension there because you hear all of the negative aspects of use of digital tools, right? Yet we ask students to use them in the classroom. All of us use digital tools on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to pry telephones from any of our hands at this point in time. So I think we're going to have to actually just get beyond this idea that video games are spaces for time waste, right? That people are just wasting their time and energy in these spaces and that there's nothing to benefit from these spaces. The fact is there's much to be gleaned and many benefits from these spaces in terms of improvement in the individual. So one of the issues is when we talk about digital tools and youth is that oftentimes there's a clear-cut set of issues that I found, at least in my development of the game, with these digital tools. And I think that is more important within the context of developing these tools for Black and Brown youth.
Mhm.
One that we found, these tools very often feel overly clinical. So if you're a person who's used to playing in a gaming environment and you're used to doing fun things, you're playing, Bedazzle Jewel, a player game on your app on your phone, when you sit down for mental health and adjustment in your wellness, you don't want that space to necessarily feel overly clinical. You
Mhm.
don't want that space to feel necessarily overly transactional either, which is one of the other issues that we have come across in our research. A lot of these tools focus solely on symptom reduction. A lot of times you'll find that there's not a lot of immersion, emotional immersion. And for the most part, these tools, quite frankly, just haven't been built in co-creation with the people who they intend to use the tools. Therefore, the
Mhm.
tools don't necessarily sustain engagement. So this is why I think co-creation and incorporating the youth voice in anything that we do to get that authentic approach, to get that authentic edge to your product is important because youth have this way of immediately recognizing when something is off that adults are doing.
Mhm.
Youth are great at
Call it
noticing
out
we're
in a minute.
calling it out. They'll tell us when we're trying too hard. And they understand things like language and aesthetics within gaming spaces, the pace of the game. They
Mhm.
understand it so well. I have to lean on them so heavy. Even things like we were drafting a narrative for a non-playable character who just sort of guides the play through our gaming context. The game is situated, I'll tell you as much as I can, within an HBCU campus context. So
Karis is snapping her hands. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
it's within an HBCU campus context. So my youth advisory board was like, Dr. Guy, we have some issues with your language because this is not language that we would ever use. And so I said,
Mm.
okay, this is why you're here. Take it. rip it up, shred it, and then you tell me what language you would prefer that non-playable character use in these
Mhm.
situations. They say, you sound too preachy, Dr. Guy. We would prefer a less preachy character. So these are the kinds of benefits that youth bring to the work that we're doing. They give the work a certain emotional realism, I think,
Mhm.
that is of such value. That it's just incredible work to be doing. They reshape these projects. Doing work in co-creation with youth is crucial, I think, in terms of digital well-being and mental health, because they are going to ask different questions than we
Mhm.
ask.
Mhm.
They are going to challenge different assumptions than we as adults challenge. And that's just the benefit and the beauty of working
Yeah.
with youth
Yeah,
in
I love
co-creation.
that. Like, that lived experience, that youth experience, they are the experts of their experience.
They are.
And I don't know about you, if you ask me, well, what was it like when you were a youth? They would probably laugh and go, oh, that was the dinosaur age, Miss Myrick. Like, what is, it's like, thank you so much for letting me know that. So, yeah. One of the things that I want us to touch on too is like, why is it so important to focus on Black youth mental health? Like, why?
Oh, Black youth mental health is crucially important. So I have a perspective on this as a professor at an HBCU. I also have a perspective on this as an uncle of six Black youth.
Mhm.
And I really want their lives to be positive and happy, right? I want them to have healthy lives. But there's still so much stigma associated with Black youth mental health. There's a dearth of culturally responsive care, and that's one of the major problems that we're trying to overcome with the game.
Mhm.
In our community, there's this pressure to appear strong, and that, I think, pressure limits us in so many ways. We're limited by all sorts of other structures in our environment as well, by systems, by the church that says take it to God rather than sort of hash it out in a systematic or
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
logical way.
Mhm.
Our youth are suffer from adultification. So
Mhm.
we see these children, Black children, and we think, well, you look older than you should look. So we instantly attribute adult characteristics to them that they are just not ready to handle. They
Mhm.
are exposed to chronic stress from the very beginnings of their lives because racism is systemic. They feel unseen and misunderstood in their school systems and the healthcare system. And so, really, quite frankly, the same things that Black adults deal with on a day to day basis, Black youth deal with, but Black youth haven't developed the coping skills necessary and the
Mhm.
resilience necessary to be able to successfully navigate those
Mhm.
issues. And
Mhm.
so, although I like to avoid personally in my work framing Black youth, through trauma, I don't like to do that. I like to emphasize their creativity. I like to emphasize their resilience, etc. I think sometimes, though, we have to just call it as it is, and
Mhm.
and the truth is out there is that the world that we live in is not set up for and not really responding positively to minoritized youth, and we have got to do something active at this moment in time to ensure that they are safe and that they have everything that they need to be successful.
Yeah.
And so for me, game is just one tiny element that I can add to it. Of course, it's in development, right? It's a prototype,
Mhm.
but it is years of investment and one small way I can benefit this population.
Right. And I mean, it sounds too like it's a different access point. For
Yes.
people, like you said, in our community, yeah, you take it to God or God's going to heal you or, go pray on it or any of those things could be something that could happen. And also, yeah, there's a lot of stigma around mental health, like, oh, I don't want to be like, quote unquote, crazy so and so on the street who's walking around talking to himself, that kind of thing. And uh, and also, there may not be easy, affordable access to quote unquote conventional mental health care. Like if you don't know how to find a psychologist, how do you find a psychologist? If you
Hmm.
need, therapy, or even if you need a psychiatrist, like how do you do that? That might not be an easy thing to do. A first step might be, oh, wait, this game is about that. Yeah, I'm gonna go play a game. That might even be more like when you were talking about the STEM example of the modules. It sounds like what you were doing there is making not STEM not just accessible, but fun,
Fun.
in a way that young people, kids, especially kids, where like in growing up, I think, okay, I was called geeky and nerdy, and I played the violin, and I was the geeky nerdy student, and my brother also was, thought of as the geeky nerdy student. That made it easy to make fun of us.
Hmm.
Right? We were the stereotype of the thing you were talking about, where they draw it with the Coke bottle. I didn't wear glasses, but if they would have drawn me, it would have been with this. Like, why are you playing a violin? You're a black person. I'm like, don't black people play violin? I couldn't name one at the time, but it's like, no, that's a white people's instrument. It's like, it is. Of course, now we know it's not. There's, lots of black folk, of course, who play violin and string
Hmm.
instruments. But nonetheless, I think this idea of your project, whether how small or big, is an opening for someone, for a young person, where they might not enter in otherwise. So I love the idea of, go where the young people are going. If they're going in gaming, then go in gaming and figure out how to make that an accessible place to address some of the issues they're coming up with. So I love it.
Yes, accessibility is the name of the game. If they can't access the information that they need, if they're not going to sustain their engagement and use of the platform, then they're not going to reap the benefits. So we
Yeah.
have to make it fun for them. And, just one way to do that is to culturally tailor the experience, which is one of the deficits that we're seeing in digital mental health tools. If we could just culturally tailor the experience and actually work with minoritized people to develop the experience, they might enjoy it more
Right.
than you would imagine.
Right, right. And again, sort of going after sort of the loneliness and community building, for our Black boys in particular,
Hmm. Hmm.
Black girls too, but Black boys in particular, we've seen an increase in suicide, that it's become, quite an issue for the Black youth community. So again, if this is a safe way, who wants to talk about, like, I feel like caca, or I feel like nobody likes me, or my life isn't worthy? You might not share that with someone as a young person, but being able to play that out in a game on an HBCU and develop community. And again, I don't know enough about the game to know exactly what's happening, but my guess is, my guess is that there is a sense of building something when you're within that HBCU that actually happens at HBCUs in real life, I think. Yes. Okay.
You, you,
I
you
didn't go to
have a
one.
really good guess.
I didn't go to an HBCU, but I'm guessing. Yeah.
An
Yeah.
exceptionally good guess. I didn't go to HBCUs either, Karis,
Mm,
but by the time I was ready to work, I was pretty sure that I wanted to work at one. So yes, that is the goal within G.A.M.E is to bring them together so that they can build like HBCUs do. One of the things about HBCUs is so important. We haven't really taught very much, I guess, specifically about HBCUs, why we matter so much, but we matter.
hmm.
HBCUs understand community. And I think in ways that we're rarely given credit for
Yes.
understanding community. We understand community in very unique ways.
Hmm.
And our students bring with them a very specific and unique lived experience that sharpens, I would say, the work that we do, that
Hmm.
makes us better on a day-to-day basis. The people who
Hmm.
have to work with these students and have to learn how to engage them and keep them excited about learning, it's a special skill set.
Yeah.
HBCUs have these really long and illustrious histories of innovation. And so it's a great time to be a person who's innovation oriented, even despite the underfunding and the issues that we're having with like the federal government and
Yeah.
funding.
Yeah.
We still are, because we have been for so long doing the most with the least,
Hmm.
we're still exceptionally well at
Hmm.
producing excellent opportunities for our students,
Yeah.
and we do it
Yeah.
every day. Some of the most important ideas, I would say, Karis, really come from institutions and communities that aren't centered in national conversations, and I think it's because HBCUs haven't been centered in those national conversations like they should have been, that we've been over here just doing the work, chipping away day after day at what actually works and tailoring experiences for our students so that they can be successful.
Yes, I think that's another aspect as well. And I'm glad you brought that up. Again, sort of this modeling and representation for young people about what the possibilities are because you're on an HBCU campus, because you see professors and researchers and administrators who look like you. The world is just like opened up, you know. As we wrap up, I do this thing called wisdom dropping. And that is where you get to share a piece of wisdom with our listeners and audience. So, what piece of wisdom would you like to share?
I think it is about belonging. Okay, so we've talked today about, I heard your story. You said you and your brother grew up feeling like geeks. And then I told you about me growing up in my hyper-religious background and having certain limitations related to that, which sometimes made me feel like I didn't belong. But everyone deserves to belong. Belonging is not a luxury. Everyone deserves to belong. It's a part of emotional well-being. And if we have belongingness, then it makes it a whole lot easier for us to see ourselves as having value, right? And so for me, I think I'd like to leave you with that. But belonging is for everyone. It is not a luxury.
Snaps, claps, thumbs up. I couldn't agree more. So thank you so much, Dr. Guy, for the work that you've been doing, the work that you'll continue to do, because you all on paper. I want to see this thing out there.
I do too, Karen.
When it's out there, we're going to have you back and we're going to talk about it some more. But I am so glad that you're doing this work and that Hopelab has, invested in the Translational HBCU Translational Science Fellowship. And again, and also thank you for coming and talking about your work on the podcast.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
All right. So for our listeners, you know what to do. You got to like, comment, subscribe. The most important thing to do. However, according to me, Garrett says like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, sorry, Garrett. I put you on blast. The most important thing to do is share. We never know who needs to hear these very power-filled messages, so make sure to share this episode with folks. And until next time, I'll see you on Unapologetically Black Unicorns. Thanks for listening to this special Black Youth Mental Health series from Unapologetically Black Unicorns. You can listen to the complete series on our YouTube playlist as each episode is released, and you can find a link to A New Deal for Youth, the album featured throughout this series, in the show notes. So join us next week for another power-filled convo with one of the Hopelab HBCU Translational Science Fellows. And until then, you be you, because there's only one unapologetically you, and that's exactly who the world needs. Thanks for listening to Unapologetically Black Unicorns.